Thank you so much for having us. My name is Gaganjeet Singh, and I'm a student research intern from Selkirk College. And I'll be presenting on exploring options for local economic development delivery models. This project was done under the supervision of Sarah Breen, Regional Innovation Chair for Rural Economic Development, Selkirk College. Before we proceed further, I would like to do the territorial acknowledgement. Selkirk College acknowledges the traditional territories of Sinaiaks, Saleks, Tunaha, and Shekwekmek people. Early in 2021, the Regional District of East Kootenay approached us with the idea to conduct a research project exploring the current approaches to the delivery of economic development in the region and also to evaluate alternative options. The research question posed was what models of economic development exist and which would be appropriate for regional district of East Kootenay. The interviewees for this project were usually from the rural part of Canada, specifically to the Kootenays region of British Columbia. This was so that we have the rural context of studying the rural economic delivery models. Our presentation today provides an overview of the findings, beginning with an overview of the delivery model, followed by what usually works well and what are the areas of improvement, an overview of key barriers and enabling factors, and lastly, the key findings. It's interesting to know how local government approaches economic development varies widely. There are opportunities to tailor local approach, scope, scale to best suit communities and regions. However, this can result in a daunting number of options, making it challenging to understand which approach is most appropriate. The first we're going to talk about is the overarching service delivery models. We reviewed literature and case study documents to get a better understanding of what is known about the existing local approaches and what overarching models have been identified. We identified key variables, including governance and administration structure, legal structure, scale, scope, collaboration, and funding. Each of these variables can be combined in different ways on the ground. To identify the overarching models, the project team needed to create a simplified understanding of the existing and the potential approaches. We decided to focus on governance structure and its relation to local government as the basic variable upon to which determine and describe the overarching models. Just to be clear, we are not the first people to do this. Existing literature speaks about two overarching models, internal to local government and external to local government. Internal is where the services are provided directly by the local government or by a contractor working under the local government system. Whereas in the external, services are delivered by autonomous agencies, which are very separate entity to a local government. However, throughout our review of the literature, we noted a third type, which is an hybrid approach, wherein service delivery occurs through a collaborative agreement involving multiple agencies. During the interview, we came to understand rather than the three distinct categories, it's more of a spectrum of a sliding scale. As you can see in this slide, there are a lot of factors, as we said, but these factors can vary from internal to external on a different level. And from the existing example, we examined that the hybrid designation was the most popular one. So instead of just going internal or external, making a mix of it in order for a better efficiency. Although we found that in some hybrids, they lean towards internal while the others lean towards external. Very few are equal multi-organization collaborations, but this appears to be a goal for many. Next, we're going to talk about functionality. So during the interview, Interviewees were asked questions to understand the functionality of different models. Based on the responses from the interviewees, we identified 5 areas where interviewees largely agreed that the things usually work well. First, maintaining and implementing a strategic plan. The strategic plan has been extremely helpful in identifying issues, prioritizing them, and developing solutions. It also aided in determining activities and updating or changing activities if anything new comes up. Second, the networking abilities of economic development officer. The majority of interviews agreed that the networking capabilities of the economic development officer aided the commissions or the board in laying the foundation and achieving initial successes. Third, having open meetings, including both voting and non-voting members, as well as different organizations related to economic development, including provincial representatives, was something which was seen as working well. Having these open meetings not only assisted in understanding potential opportunities in the area, as well as evaluating the success of ongoing initiative and activities. These meetings served as an opportunity for feedback and information exchange. Next, having a political support. According to analysis, having a significant support and participation from local elected officials plays an important role in order to maintain and improve the economic development of the region. Last, involvement of the First Nation. According to findings, having First Nation represented on the commission or the board not only helps in building respectful relationships, but also introduces new aspects and economic development opportunities and potential for collaboration. Similarly, we also ask interviewees questions to understand what are the scopes of improvement when we talk about different models. The first, organization shape. There's a large number of people. When there are a large number of people and organizations, identifying activities and providing input to few people who are responsible for execution. As a result, it becomes more difficult for the executioner to meet the expectations of this broad group. So having few executioners responsible for managing expectations and executing activities contributes to delay in delivering projects. Other than this, the other areas of improvement include decision-making structure. As per our understanding, having a simplified decision-making structure allows the executioner to be more flexible and have more control. Similarly, clarity of roles and responsibilities. It's been observed that misalignment of roles and responsibilities usually lead to confusion among interviewers in terms of deliverables and expectations. Similar to this, alignment on scope. Interviews demonstrated that a lack of alignment or scope of the commission or the board usually results into problems, especially differences between local traditional economic development and community economic development. The last one was active engagement. There have been concerns over disengagement of non-voting and volunteer organizations involved in the open meetings. So involving them in decision-making activities will increase the sense of responsibility and lead to higher involvement. Next, we also wanted to identify what are the factors which make a model successful or not. So first, we wanted to understand the enabling factors. We asked interviewers to understand what makes their approach successful. And based on their responses, we identified 7 key success factors. They are diversity and inclusion, communication and information sharing, human capacity, planning, political support, funding, and engagement and relationship building. As we see from the graph, the most commonly identified was communication and information sharing. The key points that came up over and over were that communication is really important as it helps to track success, identify issues, and exchange information. Furthermore, it also facilitates collaboration, increases awareness, and efficiency. The other two prominent factors which were identified were diversity and inclusion, as well as engagement and relationship. Having a broader group and having more people representing in your board or commission was seen as a success. Reason being, it brings more voices, which brings more opportunities and also serve as a feedback opportunity for the board or commission to evaluate their work. Similarly, having a diverse group enhances engagement and relationship building. This helps to this helps to make the approach more community driven, as more people participating helps them to improve relationships, which eventually result in a community economic development. One factor which was agreed by a lot as well was human capacity. Human capacity was considered as an enabling factor depending on the region. We'll talk about it in the next coming slides. Similarly, we also asked interviewees to understand what barriers they face. And based on the responses from the interviews, we identified 7 key challenges. These are administrative structure, competition, human capacity, data and information, intangible effect, funding, clarity, and alignment. It was interesting to see human capacity and funding to be as an enabling factor as well as a challenge. There are various reasons for this. When we talk about human capacity, as we mentioned earlier, having few individual to execute all expectations and excel in all areas is a challenge. But in terms of understanding as an enabling factor, there are a lot of other factors which are involved. For example, if we are talking about a region which includes a lot of cities or a larger scale region, having few people to execute can be seen as a problem, because you need a more broader skill set and more people to execute plans because there are multiple projects working at the same time. Similarly, if the region is small, having few executioner for projects serves well. That's why human capacity is seen as a barrier as well as the enabling factor. The other factor which was seen as a barrier was administrative structure. This includes decision-making challenges, which we mentioned earlier, but also include factors like time, supervision, complexity. All these factors eventually contribute to inefficiencies and frustration. Similarly, the thing which gained a lot of popularity other than these two factors were clarity and alignment. It has been noted that there's been a lot of emphasis on the clarity and alignment of roles. Reason, when these are not done, this eventually result into a blame games where one person tries to blame other because they're not clear on what they have to do and who's responsible for what type of task. Now let's talk about findings. The very first one is no single model that is superior to others. We said that because we have seen cases where an internal to local government approach is more being seen successful and places where external, but eventually they all are moving towards hybrid. But saying that hybrid is superior would be wrong. It depends on a lot of factors, as we mentioned that having an economic development delivery model is a permutation and combination of different factors. And based on the region and based on the factors, it's easy to identify which would work in one region might not work in the other region. Second, shift of governance towards the middle of the spectrum. With economic development, the approach should be one of a continuous improvement through active adaptive management, essentially trying things, learning, and trying again. It's the enabling factors that we identified are the similar ones found in other places. So building an equal partnership becomes important. Something that is worth noticing is the role of time. It's not uncommon for factors like relationship, trust, capacity, resources, and leadership to be identified. Trust and relationship, as well as results, develop and increase over time. We need to understand that economic development is not a sprint, it's a marathon. When we looked at some of the existing examples, time was considered as a prominent factor, and how the example evolved over time was critical, particularly in input, but also in executing activities and making decisions. Networking, coordinating, and collaboration. With time, these evolve into a true partnership. One cannot form an equal partnership on day one, so giving time would be important. Similarly, next we talk about is integration and not competition. When we talk about understanding the roles, clarifying the responsibilities, we need to understand that economic development is not a competition, it's more of an integration of different communities or the representatives of those communities. Integration is important because if we don't work together, there might be chances we might not be able to gain what we want from that delivery model. It's more important because it's more efficient. If you're not working with and integrating with other community groups, you may be in a competition with them. And even worse, you may be at odds with them. If you're fighting with each other, the community loses. If you're ignoring each other in an attempt to stay focused in your lane, the community loses. There's a, there's a significant opportunity to collaborate with other groups in the region and province to so that you can have more perspective towards economic development. Having representatives from provincial or other regions not only bring in different prospects, but also gives you more opportunities to understand what is working well in other regions. And from there, you can have some ideas to what can work over there. So it's more of a co-construction. Thank you so much. And now we are ready to take your questions. Thank you.